Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Teaching with Magic. We're going to do something a little bit different this time. I wanted to try to do a video lesson plan. A lot of people ask me questions specifically about my History Mystery Labs, and I thought, why not make a video so it's available for everybody? But of course, we are still looking at it from the lens of Mickey's 10 Commandments, and today we're looking at Commandment 10, Keep It Up. This is kind of a two-part commandment. The first part of keeping it up is maintaining the beauty of the park. Disneyland Park's always clean and wonderful. But the part that's even more important to me is keeping up with technology and keeping up with what's new. Disney calls it plussing, adding on to what already exists and making it better. That's what we're going to look at today, how to make even our best lessons a little bit better. So I wanted to start with this. This is a really cool video from a group I've talked about before, Theme Park HD on YouTube. Please check them out. They make some awesome ride videos. And this is a comparison of Alice in Wonderland in Fantasyland as it looks today, that's on the left, and the way it looked before its revision in 2014 on the right. Alice in Wonderland has always been a very popular attraction, usually has the second longest wait time in Fantasyland behind only Peter Pan's Flight. And yet Disney said, hey, we could still make it better. And so if you look on the left, you can see they've added these LED screens in a lot of different places that make it feel more like an animated film that you are riding through. It's subtle. The ride track hasn't changed. Many of the 3D elements have not changed, but a lot of the other stuff has. And it really does show. When I went on this a few years ago, I didn't even know it had been redone. I was super impressed by what they had done with what was already a pretty interesting attraction. That's what we're trying to do. Today we're going to do it with History Mystery Cold Case Rome. This is one of my first real highlight lessons of the year where students get the idea that, okay, this class isn't quite the same as maybe all my other ones are. This lab has been going on in my classroom for years and years and years, and I always try to add something new to it every year, just a little extra touch to make it a little bit better, and that's what we're going to focus on here today. So we're going to start by looking at the setup. These labs are not easy. They take a while. On the morning before the lab begins, I start setup, and it does take a long time. It can take 45 minutes to an hour just to set up the room to get it right. The first thing I need is a class set of the introduction document. It's the one that says Cold Case Files on it over there. Each desk has one of those sitting on it, this one right here. When the students come in, it is on the desk. The bellwork on the screen says silently read the sheet on your desk. I also usually have one on the front door of the classroom along with some crime scene tape just to kind of build up that mood a little bit. At each of the exhibits, you need to have copies of the documents, whatever they are for that exhibit. I like to have 5 to 6 copies at each station. I make sure that one is in color, the one that's going to stay there, but some other ones that students can just grab and take with them as well. And then each student needs a copy of the investigator's guide, both sides. It's a 2-sided document. So they will work on that throughout, and they'll use it for their closing. So each student needs one. I have tried doing this digitally. You can. These work a lot better in real life. These work a lot better as an experience so the kids feel like they're actually working with real artifacts and real evidence. So I recommend that. Then I set up the stations around the room. The exhibits are spread wherever I can fit them. It kind of depends what's going on at that time of the year. Luckily, it's the beginning of the year. A lot of open space on the walls to put things. So some of them get simply taped up to the whiteboard, like these ones over here. Down on the chair, you can see the extra copies. Some of them get set up on the counter. I have one that's a picture that I put in a digital picture frame. And then some realia here. I have some replica Roman coins that just sit right there on the counter. In the front corner of the room, this is kind of the focal point of the lesson. I set up the crime scene investigation. I do a little chalk outline of a body. This year, the plussing came in the form of adding the toga, which is just a white sheet that I stabbed repeatedly with scissors and then dropped some food coloring onto to kind of simulate that. I also put a little ivy crown, used some red nail polish to paint it up, make it a little bit bloody. It's a little thing, but it really added a lot to the experience. The students really were analytical. They were trying to see like where the stab marks were on the toga and those kinds of things, which again, they were totally random. I didn't even think about it when I did it, but it really just gave them something else to think about. So that was really cool. And then this one down here is another one that's on the wall. This is another one that we've certainly plussed over the years. You can see that originally it was a text document of a note that Caesar found in his hand. We remade it to look more real. It's a little hard to see down here, but it's written in Greek. It too is stained with food coloring, and it just says note found in Caesar's hand. It looks realistic. A surprising amount of my students buy into the belief that it is a real document. Whenever you can add those little touches, it's huge. Here's a couple close-ups just to let you see what they end up looking like more to the students. Here's another one that is on the counter, the 12 Caesars lab. And then I don't have a lot of wall space, so I have some freestanding easel whiteboards. These work really well too. And so I took this newspaper article, which I get a lot of questions about. People ask, well, why is it cut off on the edge? And well, here's why, because I'm actually tearing that edge off anyway. The bottom article, the ad on the side don't mean anything. There's no information in there. It's just to make it feel more real. So I tear the corners, make it look like it is an old newspaper that has been ripped and grabbed onto for the article. This is the investigator's guide. It's set up pretty clearly. It's pretty simple. You can obviously change the questions if you want to, but I make sure every student has a copy of it. I go over it with them as part of the setup of the activity. Before they begin, I make sure that they understand you have to match the exhibit to the question, so you're not trying to find answers that don't exist. That certainly goes a long, long way. And then we get to the go phase. We get to the action stage of the lesson. Students are ready to begin. When they come in the classroom, as I said, first thing they do, they read the paper on the desk, and then on the screen, I kill the lights and bring up this introduction video. It is available on YouTube. I'll link it in the comments here if you haven't seen it before, but it just sets up the video. It is themed after the introduction to the TV show Cold Case. They love it. It really sets the tone. It ends with Caesar's kind of bloody corpse just laying there on the ground and a lot of great mystery. Then we go into the instructions for the lab, which is not an exciting slide by design. I want them just focused on listening on the instructions. We just kind of outline the case, tell them what they're doing. I emphasize I don't want them moving the things around because they easily get lost and disappear. Tell them how long they have. I give them about 4 to 5 minutes per station. This one has 7 stations, so about 30 minutes that they get. A lot of kids won't finish in that time. That's okay. I give them more time after. I remind them that the final exhibit will be on the screen after those 30 minutes. We'll do that one as a group, and then tell them not to fill in the back at all because they don't have any information yet until, we've actually done the information. So then I set them free. I tell them, okay, you've got 30 minutes. Go work with who you want. You can work on your own. You can work in small groups, but you need to be working. You've got 30 minutes. And then I tell them to go. And the room all of a sudden goes into a state of excitement, and kids kind of just spread out all over. They figure it out really well. Tell them to go to exhibits that don't have too many people on them. And you can see there's kids working at desks. There's kids working in the corner. Big empty classroom. Trust me, there's a whole lot more kids because here's where the exhibits are set up. It's really impressive to see them do this. They handle it really well. This is not an honors level class. This is an on-level class. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. And you can see here they are working a little bit more closely. These two ladies were reading. You can see one reading it aloud while the other's following along. I didn't tell them to do that. They just figure it out. I tell them, here's the evidence. Go for it. Here's another look at them working on the counter. Sometimes it's easier than others to get to the exhibits. That's why I like to have the copies there so they can take them elsewhere as needed. And then finally, I don't tell them to sit down on the ground and get a close-up look, but they wanted that close-up look. They really were analyzing every little detail they could think of when it came to the crime scene. And here they are looking over at the newspaper. Again, you can see them reading really carefully, looking for those answers. One of the great things about these history mysteries, they are very literacy heavy. They're hard things to read, and there's a lot of reading there, but because it looks and feels real, kids dive right in. Then at the end, after the 30 minutes, we sit back down, we do the final exhibit, which is a video on the screen, and then I take them through the rundown and how to answer it. We answer the first part together, so I make sure that they've checked off one of the boxes. I tell them to review their evidence, pick your 3 exhibits that are the strongest evidence, and then we go over how to fill out our rundown. This is modeled after a lot of different names for it. The most recent one is CER. If you have science teachers on your campus, they're probably familiar with it from the NGSS. So talk to them about how to do claim, evidence, reason. It is a great model for argumentation for students. And then we have closing. After that, we discuss their answers. What did they think? What did they believe? And we go over then what it takes to write a good rundown. I tell them that we're always looking for 3 pieces: the clarity, their understanding, and their proof. We tell them to fill the cup. Make sure you can check off every piece in there to fill that cup. So clear claims, correct facts, use the word because, etc. It's good practice because this is how we do our tests as well. And then we go into a debrief phase depending on how much time we have. This is usually the second day of the lab. And some labs I will go over lots of the exhibits, other ones I'll just pick a couple. This one really, it's pretty straightforward. The exhibits are not that confusing. They're pretty clear on what they support, but the autopsy can be a little tough. Kids have to make a lot of inferences and things, so we go over that one in detail. And then we debrief with a few other questions, just kind of asking the generic sort of ideas that were coming up out of the lab. And then we come to our, whatever our conclusion was. And they always ask me, what do I think? And I tell them, I don't really know. Just like anybody else, I don't really know. And so I tell them what I think based on the evidence that I want to talk about that period, because I can argue both sides. And it's always interesting to have that conversation with them. And that's it. It's done. It's not easy to do. It is a challenging lab to put on the first time, but I highly recommend you give it a shot. Kids love it. It's powerful. It really transforms your room into something new. When we talk about keeping it up, you just can keep adding to it. Next year, I'll pick one of the exhibits and make it a little more real. I'll make it a little bit better, just like I was able to with the toga this year. So thank you for joining me for today's Teaching with Magic. I hope this helps answer those questions. Again, if you're interested in me doing more of these sort of lesson tutorials on my other lesson types, let me know in the comments. Send me an email. Get out there and teach with magic.